Des and Denton here, and I'm very excited to share a little thought, a nugget, some insight and some stories as usual with you guys about something that's been very strong on my mind and my heart. Now, I'm not going to claim I'm an expert on nature, although I'm sitting out in this beautiful setting today with the trees, but I want to share something that really came to my mind and heart over this past week, which I want to call autumn. A leaf in winter is a liability. It freezes, it tears, and it goes on transpiring water the roots cannot replace from frozen ground. A tree that keeps its leaves through a hard winter dies of thirst in the middle of the rain. So the tree performs a controlled amputation of the most productive, most beautiful, most visible alive part of itself and calls it survival. Dormancy is not nothing happening. Underground root growth continues. The tree spends winter building the part nobody photographs. Everything the spring will need is made in the season that often look to us on the eye as death. We think about spring coming, the beautiful flowers, the blossom, and all these incredible things, and we can in the same way link that, I want to say, to us. We have New Year's coming, we're starting gym, it's a new school year starting, the kids are excited, new clothing, new goals, new things that we want to do and achieve. But when we look at fall, which is the season we find ourselves in, it's something different and something that we actually maybe even struggle with. Letting go is not something that happens only to us. It's something you do deliberately at cost ahead of the season. And the growth that follows happens in the dark where you cannot supervise. The Bible in Ecclesiastes 3 from 1 to 2 says it really well and speaks about that there's a time for everything. Very well known, a season for growth, a season for harvest, a time to live and a time to die. And in that same way, I want to talk about the visual metaphor that we have in plants. But we often struggle with this, I want to call it a theology of winter. We don't have it. We look at people, we look at their lives, we look at their seasons of work, and a lot of people often struggle with that concept of sitting still, that concept of not producing. As a filmmaker, we always say in Afrikaans, een in die kan, een in die pan, one in the can, one in the pan. You always have so many wheels spinning, things that's happening. And I, for myself, often even struggle with this. I'm currently here in Frostburg. My family is abroad at the moment. So when I came over, I was like, wow, I have so much time. This is a lot, so much I can do while the kids is doing an international exchange program. And that's true. But at the same time, there's a point where I realized, this is different. You sit and it's still, it's quiet. For example, Sundays where we normally have our Sabbath, where we sit together, we talk, we're just being together, no entertainment or phones and things like that. And it's doing it alone, you're sitting just with yourself. And so therefore this concept of winter, and specifically autumn, came very strong to my heart. So when winter comes to life, we often experience it as a failure. We see a person not producing results. We don't see the fruits, and then we're like, hey, what's going on? That person is not effective. That person is a failure. Blaise Pascal said it best, as I will state. All of humanity's problem stems from a man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. I want to share a few stories that is part of 24, the international series I'm doing, just this part of background and that I found very interesting. When I filmed Ariel, and I mentioned about the story before, and at a very young age, he was in a bed strapped so that his body and his legs specifically can heal. You can think about being stuck in a bed before technology, before all these things, where you don't have entertainment, you don't have things to keep you busy, but what you have a lot of is silence. You have a lot of space and time to think, and what we would often see as a dead zone. He's not out there running with his friends. I had that same thing at age 4, going through a kidney operation, where I was a few months in the hospital, and how difficult it was for me over my birthday in specific, not being able to be with my friends. The doctors eventually allowed me to go out for a few hours, and just in that way it was so difficult, having a drip in my body, being in a state of pain, not being able to run around and jump on a trampoline with my friends. It was really difficult dealing with that space. I think about another story, David, that we filmed in Ireland, in Belfast. He was involved with a very current well-known music group. They were a group of 5, and they decided as they were touring, as things were happening, they're going to cut down to 4. And eventually the band became a very big label. They started touring, they started doing big performances, and he's been working them with years with them. It's a dream he had in his heart, growing and being with this music group, and all of a sudden he's not part of it. And he dealt with a lot of anxiety, with issues coming from not being part of this. And pre-COVID, he, in that space of darkness, he decided to go to Ireland, to go to where his grandmother was from, following his ancestral roots. And COVID came, and he literally got locked up there, not being able to just immediately come back. But he discovered so much, going through the beautiful mountains, going through all these spaces, walking with his dog, having his early morning swims in the ice cold water. And I also tried that, going out early morning with him, jumping in the ice cold, what they call a cold plunge. It's incredibly refreshing. But what I want to say about that is, in this space that we see as darkness, as winter, how much did he discover? New songs came to him, new writing. We were filming, he was walking down where they have the peace walls in Belfast, where there's a lot of history, a lot of tension, a lot of sadness about what happened in Ireland. And he was walking down, and we entered a church on one side of the wall, a big, beautiful Catholic church. And he went to the front, and there was a grand baby piano. He sat down, and the music that followed, the music, it came from the space we were walking around. It is just really incredible to sometimes see that silence is so incredibly important, that silence produces actually much more than we often think when we're running around being so call-it-be busy. I have another story, a small one, that I just want to share about Michael, who's an incredible musician in Nashville, African-American banjo player, doing incredible music. He grew up in a religious community in Indiana where his family rejected modern medicine. He himself had severe asthma as a child. And when he was 14, his 6-month-old brother got meningitis. They did not seek treatment. And Michael watched his brother die. Now imagine carrying that into adulthood. Now what I want to share, it's really not just forgetting the wound. It's not merely letting go. It is really transforming the things that we carry. We often hold on to so much hurt, things people gave us, broken promises, disappointments, dreams that didn't happen, even versions of ourselves that don't exist anymore. And how difficult it is for us just to sometimes take the best of that season, that lesson, into the next stage, to enter a stage of winter and realize that you need this time of rest. You need this time so that you can grow. Maybe that's what the tree does. Before the leaf falls, the tree takes back what it needs, the nutrients, the energy, what can be used in the next season. And then it lets the leaves go. Maybe we need to do the same. Not only throw away the past or pretend the wind didn't happen, not abandon promises, but ask ourselves what belongs in this next season. George MacDonald, a Scottish Christian writer, wrote a few very incredible statements about this. He wrote, "Autumn is full of ripeness and the grave. We need a broken season." He turns the brokenness of nature towards hope, the imperfect world pointing beyond itself towards something higher. I want to end off with a short prayer that I wrote down here. Lord, teach me the wisdom of the trees. Teach me that letting go is not the same as losing. That a bare branch is not a dead branch. That there are things you ask us to carry and things you ask us to lay down. Give me the courage to know the difference. Let me keep what you have taught me. Let me keep the love. Let me keep the wisdom. Let me keep the scars that have taught me compassion. But let me surrender the things that no longer belong in this season. The fear, the striving, the need to control what comes next. The wounds I've carried so long that I've mistaken them for part of who I am. Teach me to trust you in this winter, when there are no leaves, when there's no visible fruit, when I cannot see what you're doing beneath the ground. Teach me to believe that silence is not absence, that rest is not failure, that surrender is not the end of a story. And when spring finally comes, let me return not as the person I was. Let me return carrying only what you meant for me to carry. Amen.